Hello, fourth grade, and welcome back to another fourth grade math video. In today's video, we are going to work on adding and subtracting fractions and mixed numbers with like and unlike denominators. So you will need your simplifying fractions mat and your fractions and skip counting page. All right, we're going to start out by reading the directions. Add or subtract the fractions. Write your answer in simplest form. That means you have to simplify your answers. Number 1, 1/6 plus 4/6. The first question you need to ask yourself, do your denominators like each other? Well, let's see. They're both sixes. When you have like denominators, you just have to add or subtract. 1 and 4 more would be 5, and then your denominator stays the same. 5/6. Our numerator is 1 less than the denominator, so that means this fraction is simplified. That is your final answer. 1/6 plus 4/6 is equal to 5/6. All right, number 2, 3/4 plus 1/12. Do your denominators like each other? No, they do not. So we have to find a common denominator. So we have 3/4 and 1/12. And we are adding. Now, if you look at your denominators, 12 is a factor, or 12 is a multiple. 12 is a multiple of 4. 4 is a factor for 12. So that means this denominator is going to stay the same. This is the one that we're going to change. So I'm going to say that again. 4 is a factor for 12, so we only have to change one of our fractions. 4, 8, 12. There's your common denominator. 3, 6, 9. We were counting by threes and counting by fours. Or you can multiply the numerator and denominator by a fraction that is equal to 1 whole, in this case 3/3, and you get 9/12. 9/12 is equivalent to 3/4. So instead of using 3/4, we can use 9/12. They have the same value. So we're going to go back and we're going to add 9/12 and 1/12. So this fraction is going to stay the same. This one's going to change to 9/12. Your denominators are going to stay the same. 9 plus 1 is 10. And we have 10/12. Now right away I noticed that both of these numbers are even, so I know that 2 is going to be a factor. So this fraction is not simplified. So we have 10/12. To simplify this fraction, we have to find the greatest common factor. So we're going to list factors for 10. 1 times 10. 2 times 5. 3 is not a factor for 10. 4 is not a factor for 10. So we are finished. We're finished factoring 10. All right, factors for 12. We have 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. There are no whole numbers left between 3 and 4, so that's how we know we're finished. We've met in the middle. Now we have to find the greatest common factor. I like to start with the rainbow that has fewer factors. This one has a 10. Do we have a 10 in this rainbow? No. This one has a 5. Do we have a 5 in this rainbow? No. Here we have a 2, and here we have a 2. So the GCF, or the greatest common factor, is 2. Now, as we learned in a previous video, there are different ways to do this. If you're really good with your division facts, 10 divided by 2, 12 divided by 2, or you can reverse multiply. Something times 2 equals 10. That would be 5. Something times 2 equals 12. That would be 6. Or you can use your rainbows, your GCF. They will cancel each other out. You have to find the factor that is attached to them. 2 times 6. Cancel out your GCF, and you have 5/6. So 10/12 simplified would be 5/6. Five is 1 less than 6, so we know that fraction is simplified. Now we have 3/4, and we're subtracting 1/10. Do your denominators like each other? No, they do not. So we have to find a common denominator. So we have 3/4 and 1/10. All right, 4 is not a factor for 10. 10 is not a factor for 4. So in this case, we're going to be changing both of our fractions. We're going to skip count by the numerator and denominator until we find the least common denominator. Since you're trying to find common denominators, I would just start with the denominators. And I like that I have a 10 here because I know that multiples of 10 end with 0. So I'm going to have to keep going up here with my 4s until I get a multiple that ends with a 0. So we have 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 10, 20. All right, let's count by the numerators. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. So 15/20 is equivalent to 3/4. 2/20 is equivalent to 1/10. So we can use their equivalent fractions to complete the subtraction problem since they have like denominators. So 15/20 subtract 2/20. All right, your denominator is going to stay the same. And 15 subtract 2 would be 13. Now, would this fraction be simplified? Well, let's look at 13. We have 13/20. If we want to factor 13, we know that 1 times 13 would work. You have to check all of the factors between 1 and 13. 2 is not going to work because 13 is odd. 3, 3, 6, 9, 12. Nope. 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. No. 5, this would have to end with a 0 or a 5. 6, well, 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. On and on and on until you get to 13. And there are no other factors for 13. So that makes this number prime. Prime numbers have only the number 1 and the factor itself. 1 times 13. That's the only way to get 13 when you're multiplying. So that means that number is prime. And 13 would not be a factor for 20. So their greatest common factor is 1. When the greatest common factor is 1, your fraction is already simplified. 13 twentieths divided by 1 would be 13 twentieths. Right, then we have a word problem. On Saturday, Caleb ran for 3 3/4 hours with stopping. This is 1 3/8 longer than Brian ran. How long did Brian run? So Caleb, we know that Caleb ran longer than Brian. Caleb ran 3 3/4 hours. Which is 1 3/8 longer. So this would be the amount that Brian ran. This is the 1 3/8 longer part. So to figure out how long Brian ran, we're comparing Caleb's run to Brian's. So that is a subtraction problem, guys. You have to subtract. Do your denominators like each other? No, they do not. So we have to find a common denominator. And these are mixed numbers. So to change denominators, it's going to work the same way. 3 3/4. I'm going to put my whole number 3 out here and just put the 3/4 inside the box. And then 1 3/8. Now 4 is a factor for 8. So that means we're only going to change this mixed number. And we're going to start by finding a common denominator. We're counting by 4s. So we have 4, 8. Right there it is. So then count by your numerator, 3, 6. So instead of using 3 3/4, we can use the equivalent fraction or the equivalent mixed number, 3 6/8. So we have 3 6/8, subtract 1 3/8. Okay, start with your whole numbers. 3 subtract 1 is 2. Your denominator is going to stay the same. Then you subtract your numerator. 6 subtract 3 would be 3. All right, you got to look at this 3/8 part to decide if you can simplify it. If we were to factor 3, the only factors for 3 are 1 times 3. It's prime. 3 is not a factor for 8. 3, 6, 9, 12. It's not a factor for 8, so their greatest common factor is 1. 3/8 divided by 1 would be 3/8. So this mixed number is already simplified. Now we just need to go back and make sure that the answer makes sense. So Caleb ran longer than Brian. Does it make sense that if Caleb ran 3 3/4 hours, that Brian ran 2 3/8? Yes, it does. All right, guys. That's it for today. I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Take care. Bye-bye.